Hello. It is me, Jeremy the Motivator. Today I'd like to bring up some new kind of motivation, more involved with psychology I've been studying. The premise for this is that, throughout psychology, there's a lot of different branches of psychology that, deal with basically like their predication for what the treatment is based on. The presuppositions, like we got this theory, behavioralism, psychodynamics, humanistic. So I'm going to try to come up with one that's more modernized. I would say that it deals with what people's perception is on the modern day and age that we're in. And that way we can, approach human behavior with the perspective of, understanding how people think today and, having a more up-to-date version of what the theory could be. That's my attempts here. So with that in mind, let me propose this simple, what you would call a prototype, an example of what a modern day and age psychological motivation would be. So if I was going to examine or taking a patient or clients that is in this day and age, what would the prerequisites be? Like, I would say, okay, so here you are as an individual, right? I would look into what makes you uniquely you. Before I look at the pro-social aspects of how connected they can be with normal social life affairs, before I dive into what the problems that they're concerned about, therefore coming to see me for, I would like to know them is like, what makes you stand out? What makes you you? What makes you unique? Okay, with that, it's like I'm finding the individual that's coming from the heart. The individual coming from the heart is like the raw, authentic them that's genuine. And perhaps that piece of them can kind of be crushed by the external world. All right. So my theory is premised on, we live in a world that is very demanding. The precipitating conditions that are relevant to this day and age. There's inflation going on. There's the COVID virus. There's a lot of tension with other nations in the world. It's looking like World War III. These things are the external world influencing the internal. So how do you feel about those things that have an effect on your mental state on a daily basis? Are you involved? Are you concerned? Do you want to contribute? Do you try not to think about it? Questions like that would provide me with an understanding of, or at least an indication of, their social activism. Therefore, if you're socially active or you're seeking to make a difference, to help in some sort of way, then a part of you feels like you can be redeemed. Like, if you can help others, it means you can help yourself, right? So right there shows that this person has a good light tower sense, or moral compass kind of sense, meaning like they want to go in the right direction, they just may have some trouble or difficulty getting there. It may be a challenge. So before I get into that, or after I get into that, that's before I get to know what their actual problems are. I'd see that from the bigger, larger scale, right? Because that's what's influencing you in the background that you may not be focused on a daily basis, but it's there. That's why I call it precipitating conditions. Beyond that, I would say that the rest of it is like, how do you want to become better than you currently are? And do you see yourself finding opportunity to grow in life? Or are you just kind of based on this theory that people have a lot of stress, a lot of demands? There's things that we tell ourselves we have to do. And when we can accomplish those things and get them out of the way, and we have some spare time, we try to have some fun. And we try to have some fun, relax, forget about our worries, our bills, and then we go back to work. And, we're in a constant cycle of working, paying off bills, shopping, and, other responsibilities, hobbies that come up if you got the time. Everything else is like chores and errands. Cooking, cleaning, eating, sleeping. That's basically what makes up all of your time. Like, if you could lay that out to somebody and be like, look, 85% of your time is taken up by this. Now you're coming to see me, a therapist, and you got 15% of your time available to look at it from another perspective and say, I could change this and I could change that. But beyond that, I think what needs to be explained most to people in terms of like mental aptitude is just like what you react to. It's all your reaction, and then it's your interpretation, right? And those are things you can control. If you have a belief that like things just happen and then you get upset, chances are that you've been on that repeated pattern for a long time. Like, what you experience makes you react a certain way, and then somewhere in your mind you're triggering to your subconscious, oh, here we go again, or like, oh, now I'm pissed. Those are the beliefs we gotta get rid of. Like, you get in a bad mood, you gotta get you get in a bad mood, or you got like a temper, something's pissing you off and you're just having one of those days and you're constantly stressed out. The idea is that to help people control how they react and have a belief that they can control that. I think that's the biggest thing, because that's what I like to get involved in more is metacognition, where you can control your mind's awareness that it's a mind, and that in the second that you have between what action happens and then what reaction, there's a space in between, and you have the choice of what the reaction is. You can respond. One way to look at it is that responding is different than just reacting. It's like if I go like this and you go, all right, that's a reaction. There's barely any time to change that, because it's nothing. It's no substance that's giving you a time or a thought to interpret it in another way. It's just a sound. So it's more like your subconscious is reacting. If I did that enough times and then you conditioned yourself to have a different reaction, then eventually you could control that reaction, right? It's like the first time you heard fireworks, you might have been like, wow. And then after a while, you began to learn how to like the sound. It no longer startled you. That happens with the stimulus of anything in your life. Anything that at first causes you discomfort, annoyance, frustration, aggravation. But eventually you tolerated it, and another way to look at it is that you perceived it in a term where you said to yourself, I'm not going to let it get to me. Some people are actually subconsciously addicted to the chemical release of anger itself, so that at some point when you're like really, really, really upset, or you're really just out of your cognitive awareness, like your metacognition awareness, where that you're in control of things. Some people are actually getting addicted to the chemical release that happens when you're angry. So you're just like, oh, no, I'm fucking pissed. What the fuck? Part of your mind is ready for that rush of chemicals because it's getting your heart rate going faster, right? Yeah, more stress. So there's the addiction to the cortisol hormone itself, and adrenaline, epinephrine, and all of that. If you've done it enough times, becomes a normal, and then your body's saying, "Hey, where is that release?" So that when you're perceiving cognitively, like when you're perceiving through the thoughts and the concepts around you, saying, "Oh, there's my candy bar got stuck in the machine again," right? So you're trying to shake the machine, and you're like, God damn it, I really wanted that candy bar. All of that narration of what you're saying, the experience is not absolute. Like another person can come along, tell you a story, and it matches what you're going through, right? And then it becomes a joke. Like, hey, this is the candy bar machine that takes all your money. Right? But if you weren't there, you just went automatic mode, you're like, not again, and it reminds you the last time it happened, so now you're twice as mad. You're mad that it happened last time, and you're mad that it's happening this time. That's all based on interpretation of reality through concepts, right? You have a word, you have a story to tell yourself, and then you're believing that what you're going through is what you're telling yourself you're going through, the narration of it, your interpretation. All of that's manageable. Like, you can go in there and tweak it and say, no, I'm going to tell myself this story instead. Just having the awareness that you can do that is what can put people into a better position to control the reaction. And then you can go on forward and exercise that, practice doing that elsewhere to control your reaction. And then you're no longer getting infuriated, but you're getting, inspired to change the storyline, the headline, the narration, the narrative of what you're doing in the moment. That's really a high awareness. And then if we could do that on a larger scale, think about how much we would be changing the world, right? Like, instead of saying, like, we have these social issues going on in life, and this group is affected by this group, and this group's marginalized, and now these people are suffering, we can just say, hey, we got a lot of human issues going on. There's a lot of humanity problems, If, the news could use a different narrative too, and think of terms that connect us and encourage our awareness to think in more beneficial concepts, advantageous conceptual thinking. That's inevitably or ultimately, the words themselves are ultimately encouraging us to think in a different state that's initiating a sense of good things, like good things on the horizon. If we're constantly hearing terms that are very probable to elicit certain reactions from us, it's like the words themselves are potent with connotational emotional baggage, right? Like it's got this connotation involved just because of how it's commonly used in particular context, when really we could free ourselves from that. We could detach the connotations, or we could use terminology that's free of certain connotations, and therefore find the concept that hasn't been used as much, right? Like a word that's amazing that you don't hear as much. Like I use advantageous sometimes, or just saying something like we're all human beings, we don't have to draw races involved. It's human race. That word's not used enough. That water's pured, that emotion, that connotation doesn't have emotional baggage that's dirty because of the previous context that it's popularly used in. It's free. You could purify that water that's associated with it, emotion. You're clearing your mind, and when you use this language that doesn't trigger certain responses, right? It doesn't, because it's been used in so many different ways and reminds you of associated context. Instead, you can find terminology that in itself encourages you to think in a new way, and then that reaches its aim, right? Then you're being more impeccable with your word, and you're finding how the words themselves lead us towards a new future, a better solution, something that we didn't think of because we're not reminding ourselves of what we already know. We're thinking in the clear. We're thinking in new horizons, new possibilities. If we could do that more often, then we're growing together. We're encouraging our minds to advance, to progress, right? But instead, we constantly have a lot of things that remind us of the same shit. And the human mind is actually more primed for adventure. So what I'm saying is that when you constantly have things from the external world that are reminding you of the same behaviors in terms of how you react to them, what you're doing is you're keeping yourself in a complacent state, basically. And your mind's meant for excitement. Maybe not everybody to the same degree. I'm not saying like everyone's a secret skydiver. I'm saying like humans have been evolving into have and we're geared. The way we're designed is to have more information stimulate us so that we're growing, right? And when you stay into the same patterns of reactions, you'll find a way to stay comfortable, because somehow you're telling your mind that it's not okay to go seek and try new things. So your mind's like, okay, well, that means I have to stay comfortable and keep repeating what I've been programmed to do, And yes, we need to do that, but I'm saying a lot of the stress and the problems and the things that get people down is because we do the same shit every day. And then because we do the same shit every day, we react to the same shit every day. And when we have the same problems every day, and that shit doesn't change. It's the pattern of behavior. Because if you just add it up, like mathematically wise, think about how much time you spend each week, every day, and how much of what you do is the same shit you did yesterday. I'm not arguing that we can't keep doing that. I'm just saying because of that, there's going to be certain things that are harder to change. So overall, where we could start and make a little bit of positive change is the storyline we tell ourselves, and that's the words that we use to interpret our reality and therefore provide us with the conceptual end of our experience and how we narrate it as we're going through what we go through. The more we can change that or stimulate that part of your mind to think in new waves, right? The more you begin to evolve, right? The more you start. That's why when you read a book or you hear one of these speeches, it gets your perspective a little differently, because you're challenging what's established, and you're saying, you know what, I could tweak this here, and you know what, let me give some more information here so that out here changes, right? If it's all black and white in here, and you want to add a little bit of green, that's going to make out here look black, white, and green. So this is just something I'm providing for you to have a little bit more of ingredients to make a little bit of change. And hopefully that works over time, because your mind is meant to have that more information and more good stuff, more motivation generally to challenge it to think outside the box. And so we can keep growing, keep advancing ourselves, and not fall for the same patterns of behavior of yesterday, because tomorrow's a new day. Today's a new day. Let's make the most of it and continue to progress, advance, evolve, grow, because that's what we're capable of doing, and that's what's best for us.